Good morning. I am Stacy Philpott. I am the family pastor here at Gold Creek, and I today am with my friend Shelby. You've heard me talk about so many of those people that I do life with. Actually, I wouldn't say it's so many. It's a core group, and you are lucky enough to be one of those that get to see what I call the good, the bad, the ugly of Stacy. So thank you.
Oh, well, there's not much ugly.
Oh,
only good.
So kind. It's why she's.
That's why I made the cut. Yeah.
And, we've been friends for years now, and we really met through church, and I have valued that relationship so much. And as we get to, we've always enjoyed talking about whether it's the message that we hear on Sunday or reading the Bible. You've been through countless Bible studies with different people, and you are always so willing to share your faith, share the content and the context of what you're hearing and how you apply it to your life. And I really do feel that you represent that so well. And so you've got great stuff to share today. So we're going to dive in.
Okay.
And we have the great book of Numbers to talk about.
The riveting book of Numbers.
Yes. Now, I felt like there was an overall theme through all of our reading, but
she's really good like that. She's just brought it all together.
It's like my dinner parties and such. I always have to have a theme, so maybe I was looking for it
with themes.
But why don't you start off? Tell us what stood out to you with the establishment of the organization.
Okay, so yeah, basically in this Numbers passage, they're talking about how God is organizing the tribes. So there's 12 tribes, and I can't even imagine how many people this is. There's 600,000 people or something like that. That's like almost Snohomish County.
Yes.
Right.
You shared that the other day. And
I'm thinking,
that is such a fun fact.
I'm like, how do you organize that many people? How do you get that many people, even remotely agreeing or doing anything together?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I thought that was amazing.
Agreeing on one leader style. Okay, we're going to listen.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, I thought that that's just amazing all on its own. And I love God because he's so, for countless reasons, but I love him because he's just so organized, and that's what, maybe that OCD anal side of me just numbers. No, I just thought it was so neat how he basically organized all the 12 tribes and that the tent of meeting was in the center. So I looked at it like the cog of a wheel. If the spokes are off center, it's not gonna roll right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I just thought it was neat how every single tribe had to be in direct communication and line of sight even with him.
Yes. Well, and when you shared that, I was like, I just thought that was such a beautiful thing that you got out of it, because we all know, we always hear it, making God the center of our life, God the foundation of our life. And then when you read that and see that was his organization, that was his establishment from the beginning, it's like, again, this is why it works, that God's, his plans, they always work. And it was just another great example of it. We've got Numbers 3 then after that. And you were talking about the Levites. You had some kind of fun, interesting facts about the Levites being priests. So go ahead and share.
Well, yeah, that all priests were Levites, but not all Levites were priests. And I knew that because
I had to say that again in my head. Right.
I had to too, because I was like, I'm going to screw this up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously the only priest could be off of Aaron's line, which so it's pretty small. I mean, granted, I know they had a lot of kids and everything, but it was kind of still pretty small. But yet, how each and every Levite had a very specific task and responsibility, and it's teamwork makes the dream work.
Yes.
You know what I mean? There's so many specific things, and each family brought something to the table. And so that's what you were talking about, how you're that's the body of Christ right there. You know what I mean? That's who we are. And especially at Gold Creek, there's so many different things that you can get involved in. And you can't make this work without a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I was sharing with her that's what really stood out to me, is that not only was God organized and specific about this is your land, this is what you are going to manage, but also the jobs of what they would be leading, the skills that they have. And I have always loved just the purpose of the body of Christ, and that the church was designed for a reason. And I was speaking in junior high last week, and specifically on that topic as well, saying, yes, I know that God can be, he is in your home, and you can experience God in so many places, but being a part of the church it is what we are called to do, is be in community. It is how we grow in our relationship with Christ as well, is being around other believers as well. And that we help one another, not just in the context of church, not just I'm going to go serve at the food bank, or I'm going to go helping kids, which all those things are fabulous. But as I mentioned to you, doing life with you, you have helped me in times of need. Your husband has many skills. He has helped us and other friends. Like, I remember some good friends of ours had their back door broken in, and he went over that night and replaced the door because he knows how to do that quickly and correctly. We could have maybe done it, but then the door would have fallen off the hinges the next day.
Yeah.
But so having that community, I think, is so valuable. And again, seeing that it was established very early on, that again, God's plans always work.
Yeah. And he's so gracious to really like help us develop our gifts. Because I have to think that each one of these tribes and families all brought something to the table. And so maybe they didn't know what their gifts were, but God, he's so good to just basically tell you what you're going to do. You know what I mean? And he's so specific that he's like, oh no, you're going to take up, woodworking, or tent making. And then he, lo and behold, they got a great skill.
I wonder if they ever were a little bit jealous of, oh, I wish I could do that. I mean, you do many things and I'm like, oh, she's so good at that. I wish I could do that. Or I've got other friends, a friend of ours.
We have other friends that do a lot more things than
that. I think, oh, I wish I could do that. But just being grateful for the gifts and abilities that God has given me and using them to glorify him.
That's so true.
Our New Testament was in Mark 11 and 12. And, let's see, this one. Oh, yes. We're talking about, well, it's so frustrating. Again, the Pharisees and the religious leaders, and how we were talking about how they're constantly trying to trick and trap Jesus into saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. And in Mark 11, they're asking him, okay, by what authority are you doing these things? They're wanting him to, I guess put it on somebody else, or they're looking for a reason to arrest him.
Yeah,
the entire
they're just trying
time.
to trap him. Yeah.
And I was saying to you, we see it constantly that Jesus, I picture him to just calmly be talking to him, and then he answers their question with a question.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the best one to do to your kids though. You know what I mean? Like when they were young and they ask you questions, you're like, what do you think? And so it's like Jesus is like the best parent ever, because it's like getting to the heart of what they're really after.
Yes.
And your kids aren't always, they're trying to get the other kid in trouble. They're trying to do something else, so it's that kind of that idea of like, what's your motive behind this? Well,
and that takes wisdom and patience even to respond to your children that way, because that isn't always, my kids are grown now, but, I didn't always respond with just that
the godly wisdom, right? You weren't like Jesus all the time. What?
No, I think there might have been some yelling, maybe some,
angry Jesus.
Wait till your father gets home. Yeah.
Righteous anger.
Yeah,
it's righteous.
What else in Mark 11 stood out to you?
Just the opportunistic and the manipulation of the religious leaders. Like they weren't really seeking God. They were seeking their own agenda. And I mean, I think we can all kind of be guilty of that at times. You know what I mean? And Jesus just sees through everything. And that's what we always have to remember is that God sees the heart, and he knows exactly what you're trying to do and what your motives are and where your intentions are. And we just have to really set our intentions on Jesus.
Well,
and knowing what he wants.
We were talking earlier, saying that we are still guilty of that today. We all have some of that in us, that selfishness, that, like you're saying, the motive, or just even coming to church, or whether you're watching online and you are listening to a message. And I was saying to you that I feel like sometimes I I pick out what I don't agree with
Mhm.
first, rather than saying,
Yeah.
that was great and I could really apply that to my life, or, I really need to work on that. That could make me a better person in this, or this. But instead, I think maybe I try to justify
Mhm.
some of maybe my bitterness or wrong choices. And, well, I don't really agree with that. And that doesn't always, work out. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
The Pharisees are like the Yelp review of Jesus. You know what I mean? Always looking for something negative to say.
Oh, that's, yes. Way to bring it
I
to
know.
current. That's
Make
great.
it.
Mark 12. So this is the parable of the vineyard.
I know. You look at this and you're like, oh, come on. Like, what is going on? And then obviously they're like, they were talking about us.
Yes. And they finally do reveal that they are like, oh, because they're talking about the vineyard owner, and then each one that comes to help, they end up killing them.
Mhm.
Even the landowner's son. And then Jesus he doesn't point it out plainly to them, but the Pharisees realize, oh my gosh, they're talking about us, because that's ultimately then what they did to Jesus, that they put him on a cross, they killed him. And it says that they're trying to trick him up. They wanted to hurt him. They wanted to arrest him. But at that time, they were afraid of the crowd.
Mhm.
So then they left to Herod and devised yet another plan to try to trip him up.
If you can get the crowd behind you, then you've got you've got something to stand on. In
Which
their mind.
we've seen that a lot just in our day, just that mob mentality that is not always a positive thing.
Yeah.
Psalms, that was encouraging. I thought it was very uplifting. I love it when there's so many Psalms that can be, David's in despair and he's crying out to God, which I can relate with those moments as well.
Absolutely.
But it is encouraging when we read about just all of the things that we need to be praising God for, and all of the goodness that he brings into our life. You mentioned one thing near the end. Why don't you touch on that?
Okay, just a second. I put it in the wrong thing. And I have this in a different version. God reigns over the nations. God is seated on his holy throne. The nobles of the nations assemble as the people of God of Abraham, for the kings of the earth belong to God. He is greatly exalted. So it's just that reminder of that he's in control. Like he oversees everything.
Yeah.
As we go through all this, trial and, struggles and everything with, unrest in every form in this country. He's in control. So
yes.
and Dan's preached on that a ton.
That we need to trust in him. He already knows. He knows the leaders that are in place everywhere, in all positions, and that we need to trust in God. And that gives me great peace.
Yeah.
To know that he's the one in control.
Thank goodness.
Yes. Proverbs. Yeah. Like we were talking about, I always get in the way of God's plan.
Right.
Especially when it comes to praying for my children, my family. And Proverbs reminded me of that a little bit. Proverbs 10, the fears of the wicked will be fulfilled. The hopes of the godly will be granted. I love any time there's any passages about hope, because I connect with that. I feel hopes and prayers are connected, and hopes to me come from the heart.
Right.
And that God knows our hopes. And if they are aligned with what he has planned for me, I believe he wants to grant those hopes for us.
I agree. And Stacy's so sweet, but then I also like justice. So I always am like, I like it when God talks about wrath and justice on the wicked. I'm just kidding. It's much better about the hope.
No, I've had moments in my life when that gives me like some peace, and knowing that, okay, God's got this. I don't need to seek revenge. He already knows.
Exactly.
Yes. I appreciate your honesty in that. Yes. Because the last part says, when the storms of life come, the wicked are whirled away. There's your justice.
Yeah. There we go.
And the godly will have a lasting foundation, which that was the overall theme that I felt we had in all of our reading from Numbers, where he establishes the tribes and he is the center, to the vineyard and that those that are tossing out the cornerstone, that is those that build their life on that cornerstone, which is Jesus, will have a lasting and rewarding life. And then it's just fitting that that's the last part of our passages today.
There we go.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for asking me.
Thanks for listening to us ramble on and
talk about Jesus all day long.
Yes, I could. I just hope that you guys are sticking with it. Don't be discouraged, and just stay tuned.